Well, hello everybody. Snow greeting this morning. We had lots of snow through yesterday afternoon and right the way through till early this morning, about 3 o'clock. Actually a bit longer than that. And it didn't actually amount to much because it was very wet snow, and all of these rungs were piled up high like that, but it's warmed up so quickly this morning that it all is just blowing off in the wind and falling off as it's melting. It's disappearing very quickly. So it's nothing like we had in March last year, but it is still only February, so we still could have a repeat of March. So I'm not going to take any chances, but yeah, we get, you can see little snow flurries, but I think that's mainly blown off the trees at the top there because the sky is pretty clear. So it's not lasting very long, but obviously I won't be doing anything in the garden until at least next week. And the forecast for next week is a bit wet, so I shall grab my chances when there's dry spells. So I've got quite a lot of seed sowing to do and other preparations. I've got some more compost, but I'll have to start stocking up on quite a lot more. In the next month we're going to be starting on the cooking area where I've taken down the pond, but we decided that before we do that we probably ought to do the wood burner for the living room. So we're going to build that and get that done as well. As two projects we'd like to get done this year, so that by the next winter we're well and truly set in case of any kind of emergencies. I mean, this is nothing. So I want to talk to you in a minute about something else anyway, related to what we were saying November time. So I'll do that in a minute. I just want to get the baby in out of here. We've been out here about 3 minutes, and I think that's long enough for her, even wrapped up and coated up and blanketed up. I think I need to get her in out of this. But it is very dark. You can see the snow's fallen on here, so it's cut out quite a bit of light. So yeah, but saying that, all the plants in here, even though it's not that much cover, have been very well protected. And even though there's snow and stuff, the leaves have not been frozen, whereas yesterday we had a hard frost and the leaves of plants were frozen solid. But today, even with the snow, they're not frost bitten, they're not frozen solid, they're still normal and pliable. So yeah, the snow is not that cold itself. Other areas have had a lot more snow than we have, so I think we're very lucky here in Cardiff. It doesn't tend to make as big a disruption as in other places. We are closer to the coast, and lower down. We're not as high up as people are in the valleys up in the mountains as well. So I think we get off quite luckily here. But it is just so pretty, isn't it? Look at that, the Chilean guava. Looks like a bush full of cotton balls. Really pretty. It is very pretty. I do love it. It was ever so pretty last night by midnight when the whole sky was that funny pink colour and it reflected off the snow, and the snow was still falling. It was that beautiful atmosphere, and even the sound, every sound was like we were in a soundproof room. It was just, nothing echoed. So it was really pretty magical, even at midnight last night. Look at Buttons, she's sniffing for all sorts. Buttons, what you doing? Yeah, what you doing? Silly dog. What? Look out for that ice. Yeah, that's why I've not ventured up the path. The ice is pretty solid, if you can see over there. And there's chunks of ice, so yeah, I am not going to chance. Buttons, out the veggie garden. You know you're not allowed that side. Come on. Unless you're basking in the sun. Good girl. There you are. Anyway, so that's just a little garden update in the snow that we've had, which has not been much, and yet I'll explain something a little later. So like I said, there was something I wanted to talk to you about, just in thought of what's been happening since yesterday. and things that have crossed my mind. Reading newspapers at my aunt's and looking at the news. As I've said, we didn't have that much of a snow problem. As you can tell, it's already melting away. Everything was covered this morning, but it's already melting, even on the green across the road, which was completely white, and even on the hills in the distance, as you could see back there, even that is not as white as it was earlier. So I mean, everything in the Dorbenton's kale over there, that's completely cleared and defrosted. Everything, it's all come off all the surfaces. The wind has just been blowing it. All the roofs are clearing completely, and they were all white this morning. It was a proper winter wonderland. So what do you do when there's not much to do outdoors? Well, as you can tell, I have cleaned my windowsill and my windows. I took down the curtains that were up because we never really closed them anyway. It was just an idea of a bit of privacy, but we just had them open all the time anyway. And now there's a bit more light, so maybe that'll help a bit more when I'm painting. And it's just such a nice thing to have a clear and clean window to look at it, because I love the views. I just ignore the houses and just look above it to the hills. I know that's a bit silly, but that's it. And yesterday, before I took my grandson to school, I had the opportunity to clear out the pot cupboard with the pots and pans and all the baking trays and roasting trays and things like that. So I got to do that, and it took about half an hour. So yesterday I did that small job. Today I've done the one living room window and windowsill. So it feels good to have actually got 2 jobs done in 2 days that I very rarely get to do, because I tackled little jobs, little ones, and just left it at that. Pick one job and do that and finish it, and it feels good. I've actually achieved something. So yeah, that's what we do when the weather is not good for outdoor work. However, things that have been crossing my mind since yesterday is that what was in the papers, there was one part of the article about the snow disruption, and it made me think a bit. The snow hadn't even started coming down yet, and there was a 2-hour gridlock in the car park of the Gabulfa Western Avenue Tesco's. It's a huge one. It's one of those very big ones, and the car park was gridlocked. People couldn't move for 2 hours because a combination of there being roadworks and the road being reduced to a single lane by a crossing because they're improving the pedestrian crossing. But the report said that hadn't been a problem up to yesterday. It had seemed there was no problems at all until yesterday, and they were saying that it was only because people were panic buying, thinking back to March last year. So I think people got a bit worried and panicked, remembering what happened with March last year, where for a whole week most people were cut off and shops didn't get their deliveries and stuff like that. So people were panic buying because they knew that snow was forecast. And yes, it's been pretty harsh in most places, but like I showed you earlier, nothing near what it was in March last year. But there's still a chance for that to happen because it's only just February today. So and I was thinking how I had listened to the forecasts and the warnings from November last year. I think it was even before November. And then from November, I was encouraging people to get food storage in for whatever, regardless of whether it's just the winter or Brexit or whatever else. It's just good sense to have a food storage, even if it's just for a week, preferably for a few months. But if you haven't got space, even a week is better than nothing, because I mean, even for like last year with the snow in March, it was about a week. Some people more, depending on where they were. For about a week things were disrupted. For us here on our estate, it was only about 3 or 4 days, but it was enough to send people panicking. So it made me think how we've been given forecasts. We've been given warnings. Even last week we were given warnings about the possibility of snow this week, and yet people had ignored it. And, well, not everybody, but a lot of people ignored it, and it resulted in just in this one example of gridlock panic buying. So did it happen anywhere else? And when I think about what's going on in America at the moment with that polar vortex thing, we have absolutely nothing like it. They're still carrying on as usual, as best they can. Businesses still, some businesses are closed and some are still running. People are still getting around. Yet here we have a couple of inches and everything comes to a standstill. So we could be a lot more prepared and not be such drama queens, generally speaking, about the weather. It is a favorite topic for us here in the UK. So it just made me think how I was grateful that I was completely calm, had no worries whatsoever, whether it lasted overnight or a week. I knew that we could at least do a minimum of a week completely from the store cupboards. More at a push, and we still have stuff in the garden, even though it's not a huge variety. We still have stuff in the freezer, and as long as we don't get any power cuts, that's fine. And we still had some tinned foods as well and other dried foods, so I knew it'd be all right for a week, maybe more if needed. So that brought me some peace of mind, and I didn't have to worry about it. And I'm thinking of other friends who've been doing the same thing, that they were glad probably not to have been stuck in some of those queues because they had planned ahead and got a few things ahead of time to make sure that they at least had the essentials, shelf stable and storage, storable stuff of the essentials. So it just made me think. And then it makes me think of all this uncertainty around Brexit as well, the British exit of Europe, let's be specific, and all the uncertainty around that. All things might go fine, although I doubt it. The way they're dithering and leaving things to the last minute and whatever's going to happen, we still all have to get on with stuff, and it just gives us a bit more chance to we still have a little bit of a chance to carry on with our food storage and emergency preparedness, just to give us that peace of mind that no matter what these politicians decide and whatever happens, whatever the businesses decide and whatever, at least we can weather it until they all get their act together. So I encourage all of the viewers, all of the visitors and friends to continue with your food storage. You know, we might still get a nasty snap, but there's still time to get a nasty cold snap. Even if we don't, we still have to, you know, buy ourselves some peace of mind and readiness for Brexit, whatever that brings. And even after that, you might not have a stable job, you might not have a secure job. And if you do end up losing your job, you might need to be able to focus your money on paying your bills, and then having a food storage would be able to tide you through for a little bit at least. Even if it's not that kind of situation, if there's a sudden bill that comes, it's coming to the end of the tax year. We all get, sometimes if we're not paying direct debit and we get an annual bill for our gas and electric and water and stuff like that, if we're not paying it off monthly, that's a hefty chunk. So if you're going to pay a bill, even if you pay it off in a couple of payments, if you're allowed to do that, you still have a chunk of money coming out of your income to pay for that. So having a food storage just makes it a little bit less stressful. So even in that kind of situation, it's just about good sense, peace of mind, and it's something that people have been doing. I think before the last world wars, people generally did do a lot of food storage if they had the space, and if not, but they used to do it in a different ways. They used to do a lot of preserving and growing because that was the only way they could. They didn't have the conveniences of some of the food storage stuff that we could get in our cupboards today. Like we could go to the ethnic shops and buy big bags of pulse and grains and all sorts of stuff and nuts and all sorts like that. You can get big bulk purchases from these places. They didn't have that, especially with the rationing. So preserving and growing their own stuff was a big thing. It was just the norm, and it became the norm for a lot of people. I remember when I was a child back in the 70s and 80s, my grandparents had a neighbor, Auntie Betty. She was a British lady, and I loved her house. She was so British, and so it was such a quaint British house to be in, and I admired her rows of shelves of fruit and syrups, preserved fruits and all sorts on her shelves, and that just, it inspired me even as a child. And her garden, she had a very British, very English kind of garden. It had a fruit orchard and her vegetables, and she had all her beautiful flowers, and it was just something that inspired me even as a child. And then my mum as well, she always had a little veggie patch. Wherever we went, she had a little patch of something growing. So that inspired me as well. And I think it's something I've grown up with, that frugality and preparedness, not in the extreme type prepping kind of habits, but this is just the frugal, sensible things that I've always grown up with. So it just makes good sense. So for those of us who've forgotten over the generations, and because since then, because of the convenience of shops and the availability of things, people have generally stopped being frugal and preserving and conserving of things that they have. The make do and mend attitude is slowly becoming more fashionable, but it was an essential day-to-day thing long before it became a fashion. You know, there were people even from wartime on whole food, plant-based, as bare or basic as it was, because they didn't have the availability of things that we have now. We can have complete and extremely varied diets now compared to what they had, but it's not a new thing. It's always been that way. A lot of people have just forgotten about it because we've opted for the more convenient and easy things to do, and the false sense of security. So looking out at that snow and those beautiful hills, I can enjoy it more with a little bit less trepidation and a bit more peace of mind, thinking you were okay for a bit, but by no stretch of the imagination will be all right for 6 months. That depends on what we get going in the garden, and the varieties that we can grow that can be ready to pick very quickly, some that we have to wait a bit for, and then some ready to last us through the next winter. So there are still some things in the freezer from last year, some of the fruit that we froze and preserved. I still have some of that. So it is possible to just buy yourself some peace of mind. So I guess that since yesterday, looking at all that snow and the weather reports, the news reports, the newspaper articles, and thinking, are we going to ignore forecasts? Whether right or wrong, are we going to have good sense and just continue on our efforts to be frugal, to be resourceful, to do the make do and mend and the conserving things, growing our own where we can and preserving it, and then losing it? I think that's one of the problems actually. A lot of people went stupid buying bread and milk. Bread and milk? Don't you live on more than that? I can promise you in a couple of days you're going to be sick of bread and milk. There's only so much you can create with bread and milk. So I think people just don't know about food storage. They don't know how to do it. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to preserve it, and then how to use their food storage. So I think there's a lot of people out there already doing, like I said before, I've loved visiting Rain Country's channel and Fairland Cottage, and then Bealtona Cottage. There's a couple of them that I've always loved visiting because we have similar things in mind, but Rain Country specifically because they're way ahead of me in their habit of the make, do and mend, of the growing and preserving, and even their own homegrown first aid medicine thingies. So they're way ahead of me in that, and they're good to watch. Even though they live in another country, their climate is almost exactly the same as ours, so it makes sense to find somebody that's got exactly the same climate as yourself, and see what they do. There's loads of people who do a lot of this stuff. It's just good sense to get to know the things that they know. It's easier to learn from other people who already know. So I'll just keep sharing the things that I learned from my own experience that apply to me and my family, but everybody has to apply them to their own families in a way that's appropriate for them. So the more people, the more channels, the more information you can access, the more you'll be able to assess what's needed for yourselves and your family. So there you go. It just made me think I need to refocus my channel, not just to the permaculture side of stuff, not just to my garden and my home and all the irrelevant journeys, but be a bit more specific, I think, about food storage as appropriate over here and maybe elsewhere. So I think that is about my time up, because the little one will wake up soon and I would like to post this, upload it before that, otherwise it's not going to happen. I'm looking at the wind blowing outside. It has picked up a pace, so I'm hoping everything survives out in the garden. And the car hasn't moved at all today. Yay! Just because I hate having to go out all the time. And I've saved fuel, been kinder to the planet today. I walked down to the shop this morning and back. So that is a bit of frugality and conserving of fuel there and mileage, and so yeah, it's been a good day. I've not had to go out much. I've actually got something done as far as my new nice clean beautiful landscape view from my windows. Yeah, it's been a good day so far. Whatever the weather brings, whatever politics and finances brings, today's a good day. I certainly hope yours is. And I'll catch up with you again soon. Oh, and before I forget, before I leave, welcome, very welcome to new subscribers. There's a few more. It's creeping up quite fast. So I'm celebrating. I think when I get to 100, I'm going to get myself a few little party poppers and go, wee. I know, because I get so excited just at one extra subscription. I mean, there are people with thousands and they will probably just go, ah, and I'm thinking, it's still excited. So welcome, hop aboard and let's have fun discovering all these new different things that we could do to buy ourselves peace of mind and live more compassionately with each other, the planet, and ourselves. Have fun, everyone. Bye bye.